analysis from Max Abrahms, Professor of Political Science and a terrorism analyst at Northeastern University in Boston. Professor, about Abdul Rahman Peter Kassig's background, a Muslim and a man who had served in Iraq with the US Army, is that background significant in his murder?
Well, I think it is significant in the sense that it shows precisely how indiscriminate the violence and target selection of this group really is, because here you have a captive who's not at all defiant, he's not at all political, he's willing to genuinely convert to Islam, and furthermore, he was a humanitarian worker who was seized in the context of trying to help out the Syrian people against Assad's, genocide. And yet, even under these conditions, Islamic State had no problem beheading him.
Is there any evidence to suggest that in terms of what the people who carry out these sorts of acts of brutality get what they want? Do the dividends come their way when they carry out these kind of actions?
I think that they do. That's an excellent question. Political scientists are often trying to figure out, what utility do the perpetrators derive from their actions? And basically, I think the United States has one of two choices. Either it can become more conciliatory in the face of an attack, or it can go on the offensive, say, and have ground troops and increase the air campaign. And so whichever way the United States reacts, the terrorists can say, look, we've won. We've managed to expel you from the Middle East, or we've effectively goaded you into the conflict. We've provoked you, and now we can attack you on our territory. And it certainly seems like the latter is what's going to happen. If you listen to the rhetoric from Washington, you don't hear the United States taking a more hands-off approach, but rather increasingly intensifying our involvement against Islamic State, both in Syria in terms of training more moderate rebels, as well as in Iraq in terms of building up the government there and increasing our airstrikes. And so I think that in the face of these kinds of attacks, it's much more likely that the U.S. is going to ramp up its military involvement both in Syria as well as in Iraq.
There is possibly another arm to that strategy against Islamic State, and that would be trying to encourage Sunni tribes, as happened a few years ago in the Sunni Awakening, which did defeat terrorism in Iraq for a certain amount of time. How close are people to encouraging the Sunni tribes to rise up this time?
Well, you're quite right. That's absolutely a critical element of winning over the campaign against Islamic State, especially within Iraq. As you know, Islamic State is an offshoot of AQI, Al-Qaeda in Iraq. And ultimately, that group was defeated when moderate Sunnis separated themselves from this more radical Sunni group and came to oppose them. The idea over the past few months has been to have a change of government in Baghdad, one that wasn't as sectarian, one that wasn't as so overtly pro-Shiite, one that was more open to working with the Sunnis in order to bring them on board to try to have a repeat in terms of, creating a Sunni backlash against the militant group. At this point, I'm not actually seeing a whole lot of evidence that Baghdad is able to win over the Sunni population. We are seeing some of that. The new government is less sectarian and is having a bit more luck. But in general, the ground forces that we're marshaling against Islamic State are not Sunni, but rather Shia.
Professor Abrahams, thank you very much indeed for your time. We always appreciate it.
Anytime.